Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Growth and Revitalization presentation. That's part of the Southeast Region Assembly for 2021. I'm Bill Migley, the past National Vice President for the Southeast Region from 2011 through 2017, the position that John Berry now holds. Since my term ended a few years ago, I've been the regional lead for growing the society. And during my days as VP, I had growth as one of my highest priorities. So I've been directing growth throughout a region for about 10 years now. In many of those years, along with the hard work of our regional Vincentians, our Southeast region was among the top regions in creating new conferences throughout the country. This presentation is meant to encourage everyone attending the Zoom meeting to get active in growing the society. Every Vincentian can be active in trying to grow us. This isn't a task just for leadership. It's a very, very important Vincentian activity, and in a few minutes, you will hear why. You may hear some things in my presentation that are very surprising to you, and even some things that you have never heard of before, and they'll be puzzling to you, but that's fine. Just please pay attention, try to understand what I'm trying to present to you, and have your notebooks handy. So let's fasten our seatbelts and get after it. Okay, what is growth? Growth, what is it all about? Our Vincentians think the answer is obvious, but they may very well only see part of the story. Our society is composed of Catholics, whose main purpose is the growth and holiness of its members by serving the poor and those in need. This is plainly explained in our Ozanam orientation. Therefore, growing the society is about bringing more parishioners into the society. Growth is not about growing the corporation of the society. It's not about simply growing the number of conferences we have so that we have a larger organization. It's not about the corporation or the organization. It's about Catholics, increasing the number of Catholics who are Vincentians. Therefore, to reach out to our fellow Catholics, we need to reach out to their parishes. We need to get as many parishes in our region to affiliate with us as we can. Parishes are the key to growth. And my big emphasis is that parishes do not have to have their own conference in order to affiliate with us. A parish can have its own conference, of course, but it can also have the option to join other neighboring parishes to support an area conference, a multi-parish conference, you would call it. So anyway, so why do we have growth? What is the purpose behind it? Many Vincentians see no need to expand beyond what we have now. However, the reason is that we Vincentians are serving God and obey his commandment to us that we must personally serve the poor in order to get to heaven. Yes, it is a commandment that is clearly stated in the Gospels, such as in Matthew 25 and in the parable of the Good Samaritan. And the commandment clearly states the necessity for serving the needy that is to be done personally. But oh, so many Catholics have been given the idea that just cutting a check to their favorite charity every year satisfies the church's teaching about the requirement to help the poor. But is not what the Gospels say. So it is a commandment from the Lord. We are therefore obligated to evangelize our fellow parishioners that they too need to be personally helping those in need, and that our society provides the perfect vehicle for them to obey a Lord's commandment. Another point is that since it is a commandment from Jesus, our society is for Catholics of all ages, all age groups. There's nothing in Scripture that indicates that the commandments do not go into effect until anyone reaches retirement age. Therefore, we need to be establishing youth and student groups, young adult conferences, and getting middle-aged parishioners to see the need for our society in their lives too. We aren't just about retirees, but so many in the church, including pastors, see us as a parish group for retirees who suddenly have some extra time on their hands. We need to counteract that false impression. We need to get aggressive in growing St. Vincent de Paul in all age groups. So, organization. We must have an organized effort in our region to grow the society. There is the famous quote from St. Vincent de Paul himself, that the poor suffer less from a lack of generosity from people than they do from a lack of organization by those who wish to help the poor. We can't have growing the society as one of the last things on our minds. We can't do it at random without any real plan in place. We can't be successful if we do just something to grow the society every now and then. We must have an organization plan. So here is our organization for the Southeast region. First is the council's responsibility to organize the program to grow the society within the council's territory. The council needs to appoint a lead for the program. That Vincentian is to plan, organize, and control the growth program. This program is not a one-time deal, but is a continuously operating and ongoing activity by the council. Other Vincentians in the council's geographic area can be encouraged to be a part of the growth team too, but you have to have someone to lead the program. The leader can be any member who has the zeal for growing the society. Zeal is the important characteristic. Being the lead is not the council president's job, unless, of course, the president wants it. I say that because it is the president's job to always delegate the work of all the various programs of the council. Unfortunately, there's a common misperception that I've encountered in the region that many Vincentians, including the presidents themselves, believe that the president's job is to be the person who does most of the work in the council, that they are the go-to person for all things that the council does, while the rest of the members of the council do little at the council level. That, of course, is wrong. The president is the person to organize the council programs and then delegate the task to the members of the council, that is to spread the work around. The council then should also urge each of its conferences to appoint a lead for planning and guiding the ongoing growth to grow the site of their own conference. They would then report their progress at each council meeting. It is the job of every Vincentian out there to see to it that your council and conference has an organized growth program. If they don't, it's up to you to make sure the leadership gets one going. Remember, your leadership serves you. It's not the other way around. Now, my job as the leader of the growth in the region is to personally work with each of the council leads to guide you in your growth and revitalization efforts. I will help guide you in every way you need. We can have regular and will have regular Zoom meetings for the leads to share their successes and experiences and to keep everyone enthused and active. I also have plenty of how-to write-ups available to help you in your work. My goal is to take growth and revitalization efforts throughout the region to a much higher level. So the types of growth. This may not be that intuitive to you, but there are two types of growth, internal and external. Internal growth is growing the number of Catholics inside an existing conference. External growth is growing the number of parishes outside the conference that are affiliated with St. Vincent de Paul, and to grow your council then. So internal growth. Just now, how do we go about working on internal growth? First thing is that your conference must be visible in your parish. It is amazing how many conferences I see that keep a very low profile in their parish. It's almost as if they're scared to make themselves known. There are many ways you can make your conference visible in your parish, and you have to get after it. You must have regular Sunday bulletin announcements. You must have a poor box in the church. Do Fifth Sunday collections where your own Vincentians take up the collection. You have a donation table in the parish foyer. Members wearing St. Vincent de Paul shirts around the parish. Placing your annual report to the parish every year in a Sunday bulletin insert every mid-November. Doing an annual invitation to serve, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there's all kinds of things you can do to grow internally. And then when you are visible in your parish, when you take steps to try to obtain new members, you won't be approaching parishioners who have no idea what St. Vincent de Paul is, who they've never heard of who you are, and do not have any idea just what you're talking about when you mention St. Vincent de Paul. The number one successful way for internal growth is by person-to-person contact. You can ask your family members, relatives, friends, and people you know in church, especially those who appear to be serious about the faith. Don't be afraid to ask. Approach them. Approach them about joining our conference. Other methods include doing an invitation to serve every year, speak from the pulpit, have coffee and donuts after Mass, show the Our Society video in the gathering room. Another way is to get your pastor to personally promote joining St. Vincent de Paul from the pulpit. He might do that once a year for us. Also ask him to refer any active parishioners that he talks to in the course of his work in the parish and refer them to us. Invite them to join us. When he sees someone who would make a good candidate as a Vincentian. Also invite your pastor to one of your meetings so he knows what St. Vincent de Paul is all about. Do the same thing if you have an assistant pastor and any seminarians you've got from your parish. Seminaries are home for the summer. Invite them to come to one of your meetings because they are our future priests and pastors. Be sure to place St. Vincent de Paul brochures and copies of your most recent annual report to the parish in the book rack in the back of church. You should participate in your parish's time and talent fairs that the many hold annually. These events are notorious for not being successful as you might expect, but you have to try. You never know when you might plant the seed about St. Vincent de Paul in someone's head, and then it sprouts sometime later. With things returning to normal in many locations, asking your fellow Catholics to come to an in-person Vincentian meeting is now okay. But if you're still meeting on Zoom, that is no longer an impediment either, because many people have been using Zoom over the past year or so with other groups, so they're now quite familiar with getting on Zoom. So you can ask them to join, your own conference Zoom meetings so you can check us out and see if it's of interest to them. So now, external growth. External growth is the major thing. It is what most people think of when we say we want to grow the society. That means bringing more of our neighboring Catholics into Vincentian. We do this mainly by getting pastors to affiliate their parishes with St. Vincent de Paul. As we said earlier, St. Vincent de Paul is about Catholics. Therefore, we must think in terms of parishes. Catholics belong to parishes, so that's how we reach them. So we want as many parishes as possible to affiliate with our society. So in the United States, how much growth is out there for us, both in the United States and in our region? From talking to many Vincentians, the impression is that St. Vincent de Paul is currently in most parishes, but that is way off base. Currently, we only have about 23% of all parishes across the country affiliated with us. That's less than one parish in 4. That's 3 parishes in 4 are not with St. Vincent de Paul. So you see on the slide there, 19,711 parishes are in the country, and this is an approximation, of course, but with only 4,456 parishes affiliated with us, 23%. But now we go to our own region. In our own region, there are 2,354 parishes, but only 559 parishes affiliated with us, 24%. So we are right along there exactly with the national average. But more importantly is how many have we contacted? We've contacted only 665 parishes out of our 2,300 and some. And so we've only contacted and asked to join us only 28% of all the parishes. So we got an awful lot of work ahead of us. Nobody can say there's not much we have to do if we want to be serious about growing the society. So how do we reach out to our parishes? So we want to get them to take a look at St. Vincent de Paul. The very best method is by using a 2-phased approach. First phase is that the council's growth and revitalization team send out a letter to each and every pastor in your diocese that does not have St. Vincent de Paul there. Purpose of the letter is to introduce the pastor what St. Vincent de Paul is all about and what Vincentianism can bring to the life of his parish. You may not realize this, but there are many, many pastors and even bishops who know hardly anything about St. Vincent de Paul. This letter now makes it assures that every single pastor in your diocese at least is now aware of St. Vincent de Paul. The letter is a form letter, and I can provide that form letter to you. But of course, you personalize it for each pastor that you're sending it out to. Our main objective is to reach 100% of the parishes in each diocese for the pastors to at least be contacted by us. We want to have, this is our main goal. Upon reaching all pastors, we can then concentrate on reaching out to each individual pastor from then on. So if you don't have time yourselves to do the letter activity, I'm available to do it for you. I would be very happy to pitch in if that's what it takes to get her done. So that's phase one. We want to reach 100% of all the parishes in your council area. So now we go to phase two. There are three possible responses that you'll get to your contact letter that you send out. The best response, of course, is that the pastor says he's interested in learning more about St. Vincent de Paul, and he wants you to make an appointment with him, and then you go talk with the pastor and give it your best. That is the goal of phase one, to flush out those pastors who would be interested in St. Vincent de Paul, but are not currently affiliated with us because no one ever asked them. So phase one takes care of that. Now, the second response is the one you don't want, but it won't be uncommon, is that the pastor just plainly is not interested in St. Vincent de Paul. I've heard Vincentians say that they never thought that a pastor would ever say no to us. But of course they shouldn't say no, but many do, and for various reasons. It's not uncommon. So when you do get a rejection, just make a note of it and maybe contact him again in a year or two. We have had cases where a pastor adamantly said no to us at one time and then later on changes his mind. You can also revisit contacting a particular parish when there's a change in pastors at that parish. That could be a whole different result. Now, a third outcome you could get is that you simply receive no response. That is by far the most common response, unfortunately. There are several possible reasons for this. However, you have now made the initial contact, so the next step is to get on the phone and call the pastor, or in this day and age, send him an email. Because you've already sent him the original letter, you're no longer making a cold call. You simply reference your initial letter and say that since you haven't heard back, that you're following up on that letter, and then you talk to the pastor about St. Vincent de Paul and find out his feelings about learning more about us. The council lead should create a spreadsheet listing each pastor in the diocese, have a column for when you send out letters to him, and another column listing the final response you get. You'll then use this spreadsheet continually for years as pastors change parishes and they come and go. That will be your guide. So the conference has options. Unlike many Vincentians presume, a conference does not have to be just for only one parish. Most people think that's a prerogative. But a conference is really a group of Catholics that covers a geographical area. It has Catholics who are members that may come from only one parish, or they may come from two or more neighboring parishes. My original home conference in Ohio covered the entire county. It had 5 parishes. It worked great. In fact, such a multi-parish conference is immune to many of the problems that many single parish conferences suffer from. A method for growth is for each conference to reach out to all of its neighboring parishes that are not currently affiliated with us and ask the pastor to consider affiliating his parish with us. Almost all parishes have 4 neighboring conferences, one to the north, one to the east, one to the south, one to the west. Any of those 4 parishes that do not have St. Vincent de Paul in their parish life are fair game for your conference to reach out to. The conference's lead for growth would lead that effort under the guidance of the council lead. Or maybe the conference may feel it's best that the council do it itself. Regardless, it must be done. And like we just said, you approach the neighboring parish with two options. The new parish could form its own conference, or it could join your conference. The number of parishioners who express an interest from that parish in becoming Vincentians will determine what direction to go. Unfortunately, our efforts to grow the society took a huge hit by COVID with the lockdowns. Since no one could meet for a year, all of our efforts were put on hold, and we do not know when we might be able to start up back again. We could not meet with the pastors about St. Vincent de Paul. We could not meet with parishioners who might be prospective Vincentians. But I know in my work, there were many pastors we had contacted that had responded positively to our message. And now we were able to get back with them and let's get the thing going again. And you may have the exact same situation in your councils and parishes. We're ready to go again, so let's get going. And remember, I'm here to help you in any way I can be of assistance to you. Okay, diversity. Another component of growth is by way of diversity. Vincentianism is for all Catholics, and Catholicism is a worldwide religion. All of our dioceses have diverse ethnic groups worshiping God at our parishes. And when I did a survey of the church throughout the country, I found there were 5 major ethnic groups in the church, 4 of them in our own region. In our own region, the major groups were Hispanic, Black, Vietnamese, and Korean. Yes, there are other nationalities in our parishes, but these 4 by far the most common throughout the Southeast. I've identified 316 parishes in our region that have significant ethnic presence. We need to reach out and evangelize to our ethnic groups about St. Vincent de Paul. Why? For the same reason we mentioned earlier. They are Catholics, and it's all about the commandments and heaven for them too. How does the council identify what parishes have ethnic groups? Look at the Sunday masses listed on parish websites. If a parish has a significant number of Hispanics, Vietnamese, or Koreans in their parish, they will also have a Sunday Mass in that group's native language. Then you will know that that is a location for an ethnic group. Black parishes are usually not outwardly indicated, so it's up to the council to determine which parishes in its area are predominantly for Black Catholics. I have a listing of all parishes in our region that we have been able to identify as predominantly Black. It was generated by our national office. I can certainly help the council leads in this regard. Also, any parish that has diverse membership of parishioners, it is up to the conference to invite those parishioners of ethnic backgrounds to join the conference and make them feel welcome. In many cases, a minority Catholic will shy away from joining St. Vincent de Paul, thinking they'll be out of place as a minority in the group. Okay, the next area of growth is our youth. In my opinion, we've done an incredibly poor job of forming formal St. Vincent de Paul youth and student groups in our region. St. Vincent de Paul has been at this for at least 14 years now, but with what I call very minimal success when you look at the numbers. In our region, we have 19 parish youth groups, which is less than 4% of our 559 parishes. Out of our 153 Catholic high schools, I know of 6 St. Vincent de Paul groups. I do have one big prospect underway down here right now, so keep us in your prayers that they go ahead and go through with it. Major colleges. We've identified 171 major colleges, not small colleges, but major colleges. And as far as I know, we have no St. Vincent de Paul presence in any major college. We used to have 1 or 2 of them years ago, but as far as I know, both of them have disappeared. Many Vincentians say we must reach out to our youth because they are our future. Well, I certainly agree with that, but I still have to go back to the commandments. Our Lord's commandment about serving those in need, we must reach out to our youth about this commandment too. We must teach them about it, and we must get them active in following it at their age group also. And I am most certainly talking about formal St. Vincent de Paul groups. I don't know how many times I've approached a conference about asking their parish and school about forming a St. Vincent de Paul group there. And 100% of the time, the response I get is, oh, the students already support St. Vincent de Paul. They do a food collection for us every year. I then asked the conference, yes, but is it a student group or is it a formal St. Vincent de Paul group? And the answer always is, oh, no, it's not a St. Vincent de Paul group. It's just the youth group there. And the conference doesn't really care. But yet, to teach the youth about Vincentianism, we must have a formal St. Vincent de Paul groups in order to do so. Many schools and parishes would welcome us to come in, but the main problem is we don't ask. So, and the main checkpoint that I'm going to make here about St. Vincent de Paul student groups at universities, I'll say checkpoint, checkmate, I mean, is that 6 of our 7 members of the society who founded the society were university students themselves. You've heard about that. The very first St. Vincent de Paul conference was actually a university student group. Yet today, we don't have even one university student group in our region today. We need to get busy with all of our colleges. So that brings us to young adults. Young adults are defined by me as Catholics aged 18 to 35 who are now out of school and usually in the working world. As we keep saying, those in this age group also need to be observing the commandments, which include serving the poor, just like the older Catholics have to do. St. Vincent de Paul encourages young adult Catholics to form their own conferences due to the fact that younger adults prefer to hang out together and do things together. Young adult conferences provide excellent examples of multi-parish conferences where the members can come from a number of conferences in a particular end of town. So, but we need to get out there. The council needs to get out there and go after it to get young adult conferences formed. And if we don't work at it, nothing gets done. And the next thing is middle-aged Catholics. Middle-aged adults also need to be serving the poor. These are Catholics of age 35 and up to probably before retirement age. Unfortunately, so many of our parishioners and pastors see St. Vincent de Paul as a Catholic organization for retirees. It's not unusual to hear someone who is 50 years old say that they consider joining St. Vincent de Paul when they retire. Not now, but when they retire, as if the thought of becoming a Vincentian before then is unthinkable. However, our Lord's commandments are for Catholics of all ages, and is really not that the Catholics get, and it really isn't that Catholics get to live to reach retirement age. A lot of us don't do that. When someone meets the Lord at the end of their lives here on earth at age, we'll say age 50, 55, and God asks them why they didn't do more to help the poor during their lives, I don't think that their response, but Lord, you didn't let me live long enough to reach retirement age, I don't think that's going to go over very well. A major excuse that people have for begging off when asked to become Vincentians in those age groups is that they spend all their time raising their family. Well, I wasn't born on Mars. I disagree with that as an excuse. When you're in the younger age groups, you have plenty of time. You spend plenty of time with other activities. People play golf, they go to football games, they go to all the movies that are out there, they go shopping, they volunteer for school groups, they volunteer for all kinds of things, have all kinds of time. And when they get older, the older part of the group, the children are now much older, and many of them have even left the nest. So in most cases, Catholics in these age groups can certainly give 3 hours a month to serve the poor. I've heard the excuses, and I don't buy any of them. So our conferences need to evangelize all adults and all age groups, including the youth in our parishes, not just retirees. So for everything we've gone over today, there are a ton of good ideas for you to take away from this presentation. But no matter how many ideas you hear, nothing happens unless you ask. You have to ask your pastors. You have to ask your fellow parishioners. You have to ask your parish youth leaders. You have to ask your school principals. You have to ask your school service leads. You have to ask. Yet there's a tough thing to get Vincentians to do, to ask. I'll do that a lot. And then when I hear back, nobody has asked anybody to do anything. But that is the only way to take our society to the next level. So the second point of this whole presentation so far has been about growth. The second part of the title is revitalization. Revitalization is the other part of growth and revitalization, and we must fight tooth and nail not to let conferences die. It is every council's responsibility to be on top of how each conference is doing, to know their health. If a council has a conference that is weak and teetering, it is the council's responsibility to step in and do what they can to bring the conference back to a healthy state. Unfortunately, I've seen many situations where the attitude of the council was that if the conference isn't being as active as they need to be, well, that's just too bad. So long. It's their own fault. We're better off without them. But that is the wrong attitude. We work oh so hard to form new conferences at one end. We can't just let other conferences simply go away and leave us at the other end. It must be an agenda item at every council meeting for each conference to report on its activities. Plus, a week conference will be noticed. A council meeting is not just about planning a fundraiser or the annual breakfast. The conference presidents, who are main members of the council, need to see to it that this is an agenda item at all council meetings. Many conference presidents do not understand that they are the council. Many unfortunately believe that the council president is the council CEO and that the council meeting is solely an information gathering session where the CEO talks and the conference representatives just sit there, listen, and take notes. If the conference becomes inactive, it reflects badly on the council. The council must react before the conference goes away. In many instances, a weak conference can be traced to weak conference leadership. There are several reasons for this, but the council must step in and reorganize that leadership if possible. Another tactic is for the council to work to get new members to join the conference, and thus with new members, they may end up with a new, better leadership also. So anyway, the main thing I ask of everyone tuned into this presentation is to have zeal for growing our society. Have enthusiasm for doing your own part to bring more Catholics to know God's will, which is one of the requirements for obtaining heaven, especially when many of our fellow Catholics won't hear that from anywhere else except through us. If you wish to contact me, I'm available at all times to chat about all things Vincentian, not just growing the society. But for you folks here listening today, that's what your reason is here. So I'm here to talk to you and help you with growing, with whatever your efforts are in growing the society, and to walk with you as you do it. My contact information is on the regional leadership page on the national roster database that all of you Vincentians have access to. And I'm sure you refer to it regularly. I want to hear from you. Okay, one last thing on another topic. I did two presentations at the Southeast Regional meeting a couple years ago when it was in person in Atlanta. The presentations are about making your conference meetings more interesting. I gave a bunch of ideas about that. I received a number of positive comments from the attendees right after the presentations. However, I would like to hear from anyone who attended either one of those talks. Contact me again. Let me know if you've been successful in implementing any of those suggestions in your conference meetings, especially the ones I mentioned about using videos as a part of your regular meetings. So I want to thank everyone for attending this session. It's now time for questions, any questions you may have. And again, I'm here to help you at any time in growing this society. Thanks a bunch.
Thank you, Bill. All right, we have a couple of questions in the chat room. I answered Sally. The first one was, isn't it the work of the council, not the conferences, to reach out to the individual parishes? And I think she had asked that before you went through the internal and external differences of growth. So I
Sure.
think that
Yeah,
Sally.
the council runs everything, you know, and they should oversee the conferences too. But if it's a neighboring parish, a conference can reach out to a neighboring parish, but it's the council who oversees everything. So she's right about that.
We're on the same page. All right. Do you have strategies for recruiting minority Vincentians? And if there's resistance in some of the councils or conferences about recruiting Hispanics, Koreans, and Vietnamese to become active Vincentians and officers?
Yeah, strategies for recruiting ethnic groups, including Blacks, that we can go over in detail when a council comes up with a method or puts it on their plan and so on. One thing we've always heard, especially with Black groups, is it's best to approach a Black or any ethnic group with one of their own ethnic Vincentians, and they'll be more adept at listening to them than somebody from an outside group. And so that's one of the main things. So if we were to approach a Black parish and you have an active Black Vincentian in your council uh, who has the zeal to do so, you would go with him to that Black parish, and they would be more interesting in listening to that person too. Same way with any of the other ethnic groups. If you have one of their own group, go ahead and do that. So that's one of the main strategies right there.
Thank you. So Donna Bishop, she just wanted to thank you, Bill, and mention that when their first conference closed in 2016, due to the pastor not wanting the conference there, she was a district president at the time, and you encouraged her to approach another parish pastor, and they welcomed them and opened up a new conference in that parish.
Well, that's great news. Great news.
And
That
also,
goes along to what I said, where a conference is a geographical area. So if you have a problem with with one parish, that's fine. You just go to another parish that's in your area, and that works out great. So that worked out really great for her then, and I'm glad to hear that.
yes, and I'll second that. I think you're a great support to help with those conversations and just that encouragement to go out to other or new parishes. So how do we make the conference meeting more interesting?
Okay, I just mentioned that in passing. One of the main things is in this day and age, use video. We got or not millions, but we got tons of videos out there about St. Vincent de Paul, our society, our saints. Uh, we did our own series on EWTN TV. I think they did 13 weeks of St. Vincent de Paul stuff, and each week had 3 different 10-minute segments. So that's 39 segments there. So as part of your meeting, and so many places now have a smart TV in their meeting room, you could go ahead and use 10 minutes, 12 minutes of your meeting time and put a video on there about St. Vincent de Paul. When you get done, you might even have a reflection on what you just saw. But there's so many ways of doing that. And boy, using video in this day and age is great. And that would be something people look forward to coming to the meeting than the usual blah, 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 blah of all the business. But if you throw a video up there, people look forward to it and be something they'll remember. So that's one of the main things. The other thing is don't get tied down in business. The Vincentian meeting dates way back to 1833, and the Vincentian meeting is meant to be a religious meeting where Vincentians get together, discuss their experiences with meeting with the poor and sharing those experiences and learning from each other. Yes, you have to do business at a meeting. That's the nature of the game, but business needs to be kept to a minimum at the meeting. Most business at the conference can be done between the meetings, by committees. And then they just come back and report at the conference meeting. But don't get bogged down spending an hour and a half just talking business. It needs to be talking about spiritual matters instead.
So Jim kind of followed up on that and said their conference meetings are one hour long, and is that typical? So I think.
So actually, some people hold it to an hour. One thing I saw really interesting was they held the meeting between the two masses on Sunday. I don't know, it might be an 8:30 and 10 o'clock mass. So they met at 9. Well, they had to be done by 10 because mass was starting. So that kept it to an hour. I would say an hour is probably, it depends how, of course, how many times you meet. Some conferences meet weekly, some only twice a month, and depends how much you need to talk about. If you're active, boy, getting it all done in an hour, if you only meet twice a month, that would be kind of you're probably not spending enough time on all your activities, or you're not that active. I would say, meetings should go a bit longer than that, but only if they're covering things that need to be covered and you're not going on and on about them. Sometimes you get some people who take the floor and they'll spend 10 minutes to tell you they have no report, something like that. But anyway, keep the meeting moving along, and just make sure you cover everything, and make sure everything you cover, every program you've got in your meeting is part of your agenda. There should not be an agenda item called old business. That's irrelevant. That's a generic term. All old business should just be an agenda item under each program you do. Whether it's Walk for the Poor, whether it's visiting shut-ins, whether it's the food pantry, your We Care program or whatever, those are your agenda items and not old business, because old business, that's just too generic, to get her done.
Thank you, Bill. I just added just on that topic. The Leadership Task Force just hosted an effective conference meetings webinar a couple of weeks ago, and so I put the link to that recording in the chat room if anybody wanted to watch that at their discretion. It's just found on the SVDP USA member website, so I put the link there for you.
Okay, that's great.
Where are we now? I think a lot of us might scratch our head at this. Anita said, I do not understand how a pastor can refuse the presence of a St. Vincent de Paul conference. How does it happen, and does the diocese acknowledge that?
Okay, let me answer the second part first. My opinion is that, you contact all the pastors and see where they stand. The council president gives an annual report to the bishop. He's supposed to meet with the bishop annually. That can be part of that report to the bishop. Bishop so-and-so, you got 88 parishes in your diocese, and only 35 of them are affiliated with St. Vincent de Paul who want us. But yet the pastors out there speak about serving the poor, but yet we've asked all other 55 to join us, and they've all declined. So we just want to mention that to you, Bishop Smith. Get that out there to the bishop, and so on. Okay, now back to why. Okay, it's real interesting. In a lot of cases, you don't know why. Some might say it's because the bishop knows that St. Vincent de Paul is a Catholic society. It's not a parish outreach group, so therefore he doesn't control the conference, and he don't want anything in his parish that he doesn't control. But of course, it's not technically in his parish. All he's doing is just affiliating with us and supporting us and so on. But you got all kinds of different pastors out there with different ideas. That's one thing. I had a pastor once who gets on Catholic radio locally once a week, and I'd say 2 out of every 4 times he's on there, he's talking about the need for Catholics to serve the poor. Oh, wonderful. So I gave him a call about St. Vincent de Paul. Here we are. You say we need to be helping the poor. We're here for you, Father. when can I come down and talk to you? And he says, oh, I'm not interested. Why? I don't know. He just said we need to be helping the poor. And I didn't mention, he mentioned that, he didn't know how his parishioners can help the poor. So that's where I came in and said, I've got your answer. And he said, no, not interested. So don't know what his background is about St. Vincent de Paul, but he said no. And you got others. Sometimes you do have pastors from other religious, what do I want to say, organizations. They might be Josephites or I can't think of who else at the moment, but they're the pastors in a parish in your diocese. So they want their own religious type of helping the poor in their parish. They don't want something outside like Vincentianism. So yeah, I can understand that. That's fine, but we have one in our own diocese. The religious order just left that parish. They put a diocesan priest in as pastor now. So that's fair game for us to reach out to a new parish that was off limits to us before. But that's another reason. But the main reason, we don't know, and of course, they're not telling us. We've also had pastors tell us no. And I had one pastor tell us no 2 years in a row. And then suddenly, a couple years later, suddenly he went St. Vincent de Paul. Well, great. We don't know what changed his mind, and so on. But you just never know what's going on in the pastors' lives, and, what experiences they have, and so on. We just have to keep at it. That's the main thing. Keep at it.
Okay, what do you recommend as the best way to motivate Vincentians who have fallen away during the pandemic and don't seem very interested in returning?
Okay, the main thing is personal contact. Invite them to come back. And I certainly understand that. Once you get out of a habit, which is the main reason we meet weekly or at least twice a month, is so you stay in the habit of coming to meetings and being a Vincentian. But if you could get out of that habit, like many did during the pandemic, their attitude is, I don't miss St. Vincent de Paul, so I can do other things with my life. So the main thing is personal contact, somebody in your conference who's best at doing it, at least get with them and try to talk them into coming back. I've been through that with the parish I belong to. I had belonged to a small parish, and we lost 2 or 3 very good members in a small parish just out of clear blue sky. And so I contacted each and every one of them, but not a one of them could I convince to come back. They wouldn't say why they left. So I don't know what the background was, but we tried. That's the only thing you can do is try. But if you don't try, then it's your own fault, that they've gone away. But don't be surprised if you try and they won't come back. But at least you tried.
Well, that's all we had in the chat room.
Okay, let me follow up a little bit more on that last one, Amanda. Emphasize to them how it's God's commandment to us that we must be helping the poor personally to get to heaven. It's clearly stated in Scripture. Mention that to the people that have fallen away and see if that doesn't ring a bell with them, that we provide the excellent vehicle for them to obey our Lord's commandment. We're not the only way, but we're the best way to do it, and see if that doesn't work. Again, you've tried.
I can just add on to that just from what we're seeing here in Georgia and what I've heard on some of the formation leadership calls recently, that we're all looking at how do we start getting back into in-person meetings and in-person home visits, and a lot of conferences are starting out with in-person meetings, but also trying to pull in the spiritual aspects. So doing a spiritual retreat and inviting the members to come is a good start there. And then, like Bill said, be consistent with meetings again and all of that. But if you can do some type of retreat for a day or a couple hours, it's a good opportunity to get everybody back together and get back to our, essential elements that we've missed out on over the years.
Exactly.
Anyone, if you have anything else, feel free to unmute your microphone and ask Bill. Jim Hines, you said you have a document outlining the 4 officers of a conference. Would you like to elaborate on that?
Okay, you mean me or Jim?
Oh, there he goes. He said the president, spiritual director is not mentioned as an officer.
Okay, that's kind of, that's kind of a hazy area there. I would consider them an officer. They may not be technically an officer if you look at the rule or something like that, but I would consider them an officer. And so I don't know if there's any, there wouldn't be any stipulation that is, that would require someone to be a spiritual advisor. That wouldn't be true for an officer too.
If they're clergy, Bill, I believe they cannot.
I'm sorry?
If they're clergy, they can be the spiritual advisor, but they can't actually.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you're right. That is one spot there. That is one one part. So yeah, technically they're not an officer, but yet I always say you need 5 people to run a conference, so you could say the 5 officers and a spiritual advisor. So they're all kind of the same thing, but you're exactly right. Clergy could be the spiritual advisor.
I think
But one thing I want to mention, the spiritual advisor must be an active spiritual advisor. When you have the clergy doing it, a lot of times that's in name only. The clergy doesn't have time to come to the meetings and so on. But if you got one who wants to be a Vincentian, that's great. That's perfect. But just make sure it's somebody who has the time to do it.
Got 5 minutes left. And I don't know if everybody knows, there's a whole section on the USA website on growth and revitalization with tons of resources and tools that you can pull.
Yes, all these things on our national website. People need to be going into the website regularly and reading things. Lots and lots of information that will help you to be a better Vincentian, including growth and revitalization.
Well, if nobody else has anything else, you're ending 4 minutes early here, Bill.
Well, that's good. That's good.
Jim asked, does YouTube have anything on this topic?
Oh yeah, go to YouTube and just type in or use Alexa and say St. Vince de Paul Society. And there's lots of conferences and councils that put YouTube stuff up. Our national organization in St. Louis has put lots of stuff on there. I think the things I was just talking about to do at your conference meetings, the videos, I think a good portion of them are on YouTube. So, at home, you can pull them up, and at your meetings, get yourself a smart TV if you don't have one. Those things are dirt cheap today. I just bought a 50-incher for just $350. It's top of the line for a 50-inch. And, for $350 for your meetings, it's well worth the expense. But you just pull up YouTube and have at it. Plus the videos, there's also videos on our national website too. If you go around to the different menu items.
If you're subscribed to the Fredericks E-Gazette, the Growth and Revitalization Committee has, I think, a standing every 3 weeks, a webinar that they do just on that topic. So you can join those.
Yeah, that's right. And they have those once a month. Actually, they're twice a month, one for growth, one for revitalization. They're always on the Tuesdays at, I believe, 6 o'clock Eastern time, or Central time, I mean.
Thank you. All right. So everybody's going to go ask one person to join the society tomorrow, right?
That's right. And please contact me when you want to talk about growing the society.